In the isolated wilderness, far from any village, the moon hung high and full, casting an eerie glow over the dense forest. For years, Dorian had lived in these woods, running from the hunters who once pursued him relentlessly. He had been turned into a werewolf after a brutal attack, and from that moment on, his life became a constant flight from death. Each night, Dorian transformed, his body racked with agony as the wolf emerged. With every howl, every scent of blood, he felt himself slipping further away from the man he once was. He had once tried to control it, even sought out help, but the hunters never gave him peace, and neither did the beast inside him. For years, he fled through mountains, forests, and forgotten ruins, always one step ahead of the silver-tipped arrows and the snarling wolves that hunted him. He had hoped that, in time, the curse would weaken, that he might find some shred of humanity left within him. But all he found was solitude. Isolation became his only refuge, and the wilderness his prison. And then, as if the gods themselves had granted him mercy, the hunters disappeared. One by one, they stopped tracking him. Perhaps they believed him dead, lost in the endless wilderness. Dorian survived. The beast within grew stronger, more cunning, and more dangerous. He learned to live with it, harnessing the power of the wolf while clinging to the fragments of his humanity. Time passed, and Dorian's wounds healed, his body adapting to the monstrous strength within. His senses sharpened, his instincts honed. He no longer feared the full moon, he embraced it. The beast and the man had become one, but as his strength grew, so did the hunger. One night, under the full moon's glow, Dorian stood on the edge of a high cliff, looking out over the vast forest that had once been his sanctuary. His eyes gleamed with a savage hunger, and the beast within him stirred, not for prey but for vengeance. He had spent years hiding, but now, with the power he possessed, he was no longer the hunted. He had become the hunter. Dorian turned his gaze toward the distant horizon, where the village he once called home lay hidden. He could smell the faint traces of its life, the fires burning, the people unaware of the shadow that loomed over them. They had sent hunters after him, branded him a monster. But now he had returned, no longer weak or afraid. This time, the village would know true fear. And as Dorian took his first step toward the path that would lead him back, a chilling thought crept into his mind. Would he spare anyone, or would the beast inside claim everything? The night remained silent as he disappeared into the shadows, and the moon watched, as it always had, indifferent to the terror it unleashed. Dorian moved with the stealth of a predator, his senses attuned to every sound, every whisper of the wind. The village lay nestled in a valley, a cluster of simple homes illuminated by the warm glow of lanterns. He could hear the laughter of children and the low hum of conversations, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon them. As he approached the edge of the village, memories flooded back, faces of friends turned to ghosts. The warmth of love twisted into anguish. He had once fought to protect them, but now he was filled with a cold resolve. The beast within him howled for retribution, urging him to unleash the rage he had bottled up for so long. Dorian paused at the tree line, watching as the villagers went about their evening routines. But amidst the familiar sights, something felt off. A group of figures huddled near the village square, their expressions grim. They were clad in dark cloaks, their faces obscured by shadow. He strained to hear their murmurs, a sense of foreboding creeping over him. "Need to eliminate the threat," one of them said, his voice low and steady. "The beast must be stopped before it grows too strong." "Do you think it knows we're hunting it?" Another replied, a hint of fear lacing their tone. Dorian's heart raced. They were still hunting him, even after all this time. But who were these cloaked figures? He edged closer, hiding in the underbrush, adrenaline coursing through his veins. As he listened, he learned that they were not just hunters, they were a secretive order dedicated to eradicating all monsters, be they man or beast. They spoke of a powerful artifact, a relic said to control creatures like him, a weapon forged in the fires of ancient magic. The whispers hinted at their plan to lure him out, to trap him and use the artifact against him. A sense of dread washed over Dorian. These were no ordinary hunters, they were organized, determined, and ruthless. But what had driven them to such lengths? What else had they planned for the village? The night deepened, and as he watched, the figures moved in unison, breaking apart to take positions around the village, laying traps and setting wards. Panic bubbled inside him. If he didn't act soon, the villagers he once cared for would fall victim to a greater danger than he had ever posed. But what could he do? The beast inside him clamored for vengeance, yet the man yearned for redemption. He had come to claim revenge, but now he faced a choice: confront the order and risk exposing himself to the villagers, or retreat and let them deal with this new threat alone. Just then, a familiar scent wafted through the air, a scent he recognized all too well. Mia, the village healer, the only one who had ever believed in him. The memories of their shared laughter, her gentle hands nursing his wounds, surged back. If he returned, she would see the monster he had become. Dorian clenched his fists, his heart torn between the impulse to protect her and the fear of what he had become. But as he looked back toward the cloaked figures, determination ignited within him. He wouldn't let her or anyone else face this threat alone. The darkness that had consumed him would now be wielded as a weapon to defend those he had once loved. With newfound resolve, he stepped out of the shadows, ready to confront the hunters, the beast within him poised for battle. But as he drew nearer, he noticed something chilling, a flicker of recognition in the eyes of one cloaked figure, a glint of silver that looked hauntingly familiar. Dorian, the figure breathed, their voice slicing through the tension like a blade. The realization crashed over him. It was not merely a hunter, but someone from his past, someone he thought he had left behind. Return to the darkness, or we will bring the darkness to you, they hissed, eyes gleaming with the promise of betrayal. And in that moment, Dorian knew the battle was not just for survival, it was a fight for his very soul. As the wind howled and the shadows danced around them, a choice loomed ahead. Would he embrace the monster he had become, or reclaim the man he once was, even if it meant risking everything? The night held its breath, waiting for his answer. The true hunt was just beginning. Dorian's heart thundered in his chest as the figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing a face he once loved. Mia stood before him, her eyes wide with shock, her lips trembling. "Dorian," she whispered, disbelief etched across her features. "Is it really you?" He stepped forward, the moon casting an ominous glow on his form. "I came back for you," he said, but his voice was a low growl, tinged with the beast's hunger. "There's a threat." Before he could finish, Mia's expression shifted from confusion to terror as she took a step back, instinctively drawing a small dagger from her belt. "You shouldn't have returned. You're no longer the Dorian I knew." The cloaked figures encircled them, a chorus of hisses and murmurs echoing through the night. Dorian felt the beast within him stir, its desire for protection mixing with rage at the betrayal. The hunters tightened their grip, silver glinting in the moonlight. "Stay back," Mia shouted, fear spilling into her voice. "You're a monster." Pain shot through Dorian, a pang that twisted in his gut. But he had no time to process it. The hunters lunged at him, silver flashing in their hands. Dorian's instincts kicked in, and he transformed fully into the beast, muscles rippling, claws extending, teeth bared. The night exploded with primal energy as he fought back. The clash of flesh and steel rang through the air, a cacophony of snarls and screams. Dorian's newfound strength overwhelmed the hunters, but as he fought, he caught glimpses of Mia's terrified face. She saw him not as the man he was, but as the monster he had become. In the chaos, Dorian lost himself to the beast, his vision blurring, his mind clouded with rage and despair. One by one, he took down the hunters, tearing through their ranks, reveling in the raw power surging through him. But every life he took felt like another piece of his humanity slipping away. Finally, he stood among the fallen, panting heavily, his fur matted with blood. The forest was silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of the village still unaware of the horrors that had unfolded. As he turned to Mia, ready to plead for her forgiveness, he saw her face pale with horror, eyes wide as she looked not at him but at something behind him. Confusion swept over him, and he turned. In the shadows, the remaining cloaked figures stood, their silver weapon gleaming ominously. "You have unleashed the true darkness, Dorian," they sneered, voice dripping with malice. "You think you can return and walk among them. You think you can be both beast and man. You were wrong. With that, they raised the artifact, a dark, twisted talisman that pulsed with a sinister light. Dorian felt an unnatural energy flood the air, a chilling force that began to constrict around him, freezing him in place. No, Mia cried, reaching out toward him, her voice filled with desperation. But the talisman glowed brighter, illuminating the night, and in an instant, Dorian felt himself pulled back, as if being ripped from his own body. The darkness surged forward, enveloping him, and he screamed an agonized howl that echoed through the forest, merging with the wind. As the shadows consumed him, he caught one last glimpse of Mia, her face twisted in anguish, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered his name, but he was slipping away, the light fading as the darkness claimed him completely. The forest fell silent again, the only sound the faint rustling of leaves. And then, from the depths of the shadows, a low growl emerged, echoing through the night, a sound filled with an insatiable hunger. Dorian was gone, but something far more sinister had taken his place, a creature forged from his rage and despair. The hunters had succeeded in their quest, but at a terrible price. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the village remained blissfully unaware of the horror lurking in the woods, waiting for its chance to strike. And somewhere deep within, the echoes of Dorian's humanity screamed for release, but it was drowned out by the primal hunger of the beast, forever lost in the darkness. The night would return, and with it, a new hunt would begin.